Welcome back to The Tangent. Today we're going to revisit a topic that we discussed early in our podcast that we really didn't get a whole lot into. First of all, though, we're going to say who's in the room. We have Devin,
Yo-yo,
and Tim, and myself, James. Nobody else decided to show up today. Oh, wait, that's just Harrison. Anyway, so we're going to revisit Star Wars. So the first podcast, we said that we weren't going to crap all over the movies, and we ended up crapping all over the movies.
We did not. We crapped all over some of the movies.
So
today we make no promises.
Yes, today we make no such promises.
Today's podcast, we're not going to have any real form in it, so I'm not going to really push us.
Should we go through the movies like one at a time, like start it at one and move
we can
our way
do that.
Like thumbs up, thumbs down, or
I don't want to like I said, I don't want to put a we're going to talk in this direction to where I normally try to focus us into a point. So we're just going to have a personal conversation between the three of us on our thoughts on where the franchise went when Disney took over.
We already got like 15 minutes into it and decided to just record.
Right.
Yeah.
we had started discussing because we were
Tim had the
prepping a little
wherewithal
bit.
to be like, wait a second, I don't want to keep talking to you if I'm not going to be recorded, because
Right.
what I have to say is way too good for just your ears alone.
We were trying to get ourselves prepped into doing this episode, and we ended up talking a lot about what we should have been talking about on the podcast. So we can go through one movie at a time. Are we gonna include the side movies?
We can include the side movies, but we might as well
it.
do them either at the end or try and sneak them in where they go.
Okay.
Uh,
So we're gonna start in order, in chronological or release order.
we could do either, I guess.
Let's do chronological because I like really bashing the prequels. And
I
wanna get that
like
over
just
with.
establishing the timeline for anybody that doesn't understand
so
much about the Star Wars.
We're just gonna go chronological. So we're gonna start with episode 1,
The Phantom Menace.
The Phantom Menace. Now, I was watching something. I think you might have posted it. Something about them.
How they're all
They're
all
completely
named wrong. Yeah, I thought, I'm like, dang, he's got a great point.
I saw that meme and I was just like, once you really go through it, you could rename it in this way too.
Yeah, there's
Like,
a couple.
there's a couple different ways you could shift the names around. It would
I
still
don't
work.
remember the meme. If I remember it, I'll try to have Harrison post it
It's
somewhere,
something
or maybe
like,
even throw it up on the video.
Episode 1, The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
If you've seen the movie, you could definitely expect it to be called The
Return
Rise
of the
of
Jedi
Skywalker.
could have been Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, exactly.
And like.
Yeah, no, I think that's how it started with Episode 1, The Rise of Skywalker, and then Episode 9 was Return of the Jedi or something like that.
Yeah, like there's a bunch of different ways to try and run this.
It was so silly.
Or no,
Anyway.
I think Force Awakens was A New Hope, and then Return of the Jedi was Luke.
And Force
Like
Awakens
was A New Hope or something.
Oh man,
I don't know.
Force Awakens
anyway.
could have been Empire Strikes Back. Like it's
Right. Right. The way they named him, it was just weird. Anyway, so we're going to go with The Phantom Menace first, which is episode 1, where you meet Anakin and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and then you also meet
Queen Amidala, Padme.
Princess Amidala, because at the time I think she was...
She was a Queen Amidala.
Was she Queen Amidala at that time?
she was Queen.
Anyway,
Ruler
either,
of
whatever. Anyway, so,
Which that's one thing I want to go ahead and get stuck on into is she is queen and was elected queen.
yes.
You don't elect a monarchy, and they don't have term limits. That is not how monarchies work. That is, it is also very inconsistent for later on when Leia is a princess.
Yeah.
How is she supposed to be a princess with a monarchy that is, democratic, and also her parent was no longer royalty? It doesn't make sense.
Well,
Yeah.
Princess
Yeah, there's some big
Leia was
inconsistencies
Princess
with that
Leia
one.
not because of Amidala. She was a princess because of
Organa.
Organa.
That doesn't make any sense either, because Organa was a senator.
Agreed. Like I
But
said,
he
there are
was-
great inconsistencies.
He
He was a senator.
Yeah, he was.
So I think that's just an inconsistency of going from the originals
Maybe
to the
it's
prequels.
just something she got a title for
'Cause
through something else.
I
have
think
no
that they
input.
just like wanted her to be
I
a
think
princess.
George Lucas just wanted to talk about like issues with like republic and democratic like democracies getting taken over by like authoritarianism or some other form of like oligarchy. You know, just like he wanted to talk about, you know, democracy being taken over by a dictator. And
don't just blame that.
He had formerly used basically a dictatorship as, you know, sort of the thing to build around Princess Amidala, and he was like, it doesn't work for the story I want to tell, so he just made something up.
Yeah, that sounds like something Lucas would do.
Yeah, honestly.
So,
there's
about
quite
the
a bit.
first movie. Now, there are good parts of the first movie. There are bad parts about the first movie.
There's some really good things in the first movie. There's some really bad things in the first movie. But Jar Jar, if you cut him out, the movie becomes a lot cleaner.
Tolerable.
You don't need quite as much of the pod racing. It doesn't need to be that long. If you cut out a bit of that, it makes it a little bit more tolerable.
Yeah.
The lightsaber fight at the end is extremely flashy and very interesting to watch until you actually watch it too closely, and then it just looks funny.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
as a kid, when we watched it, as younger, like for me, I was
like
adult.
5.
I was out of my teenage years, but just watching it as a Star Wars fan, the first time you watch the Duel of Fates is like you are in this like, heck yeah, go! Oh my god, that was cool. You never got to see that kind of know combat before.
Yeah,
it was great, but
it was a whole new.
I think
level.
we discussed it in the other one, which I just re-listened to our old podcast.
Right, our empty bag theory.
Empty bag.
Yeah,
Bag.
big. He carries a different bag.
The prequels are basically Gucci bags, and
Yeah.
yeah.
But
They charge $500 for a
they
$40
put in
bag.
these saber battles to appease the fans. I think there was just like, oh, let's put in a saber battle here.
I don't
because-
think it was to appease the fans. I think it, like Lucas talked about his motivations for making the battles that way, and he was talking about trying to make that he had the technology and he wanted to make the Jedi
Great.
more like how they were in their heyday. So he was making them more powerful. So you can see that from the very beginning when like they use super speed to like run away from droids.
Yeah.
Well, there was no talk about anything close to super speed in the original trilogy. You know, there was no running really, really fast away from things or anything like that. It was basically just you could move things with your mind. You can kind of see the future if you concentrate really hard,
And you can trick people.
And you can trick people, and that was it. That like those were like the three major pillars of the Force. It was it was mind tricks, telekinesis, and premonition.
And if
I
you're a
guess, yeah.
Sith, you can do lightning, but we didn't know that was exactly the same thing because
Right.
we also talked about Bogon
Yeah.
in the last episode.
So I mean, the Force. Yeah, I guess he wanted to show the Force in more of a
I think this is kind of
power level.
like that goes into the fact that he actually more introduces and explains, or at least alludes to the Sith as being kind of like the other side. In that movie, that's kind of where it majorly gets its introduction. You know, because they talk about, the Sith will have their revenge. You know, the talk between Maul and Sidious.
But I mean, it's also really strange because Lucas tries to separate the Jedi and the Sith in what I'm sure in his mind was very like an objective fashion. The problem is, as a result, it allowed a bunch of basically millennials to look at his description of Jedi and Sith and break them down really, really hard because he defined them too rigidly.
Yeah.
And when you define something that rigidly, all you gotta do is find one little thing to start chipping at, and the whole thing's gonna fall apart. Mm-hmm. Like when they were just sort of like nebulous. This is the good side. This is the evil side. There was nothing to chip at. It was just here's the evil one. Here's the good one.
There's no crack in the
Right. It's like you're trying to crack through pudding. Like there's no real form to it. But when you start defining everything, it becomes too solid, and he gave them too many rules. So it's like so the Sith are supposed to be all about emotion, but the Sith don't ever fall in love for reasons, I guess, because love's not an emotion. But the Jedi aren't supposed to fall in love because they're supposed to control their emotions. So, what?
Yeah, it seems like
which one of them deals with the happy emotions? Neither, apparently.
Yeah,
because you're not supposed to be happy.
It seems like in the prequels he tried to make it seem like, Anakin's the hero, so really is either side right?
I guess.
I mean, that's as being 5 when the first episode came out, and like 7 or 8 when the Attack of the Clones, and like 11 when Revenge of the Sith came out. Like, I was rooting for Anakin.
Oh,
because that's who the kid's going to relate to.
So
it seemed kind of
every 2 years or every other year. So
whatever.
It seemed kind of like he based the Jedi off of Buddhist monks. Not for any real reason of philosophy, but because he thought Buddhist monks were cool, and as a result, the Sith were just bad guys. So he just was like, they deal with all the other stuff, but if they started dealing with things like all of the emotions, so they're all running around and just like, yeah, let's be happy and party and high five with each other and go fall in love and have families and things and. It's like, well, okay, so they only have to deal with the negative emotions. They're only like anger and greed and jealousy and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's like when they're like.
But if the Jedi are just stoic monks that don't do anything all day, then
how are they the good guy?
So the Jedi are no emotions. The Sith are negative emotions, and positive emotions exist nowhere in the Force. The Force is not happy. It's not a happy place. You're either genocidal or sexless, and that's it. Like that's your existence if you're in the Force.
Genocidal or sexless. Yeah, this is true. Established many years before.
Right.
All right. So I mean, again. Some good things, some bad things came out of episode 1.
What were some of the good things, Tim? Because you talked about the pod racing and then we went on a spiel.
Pod racing as a concept is very interesting. The whole slavery thing with Anakin, because I still to this day I don't know how people arrived at Anakin was an immaculate conception. Because I look at that scene over and over and over again, and she talks about the fact that there was no father in the same way that I hear, single parents talk about there was no father.
Right.
It's the exact same, kinds of words. It's the exact same tone. It's it sounds to me like some dude knocked her up and then either ran away or was sold off because he was also a slave. Right. And there was therefore no father. She raised Anakin, and then somehow we get an immaculate conception out of that. I don't know how anyone arrived at that conclusion. I don't know if it was the original intention, but I guess it's what we got at the end.
I mean, also, to her there could be no father because it could have been her owner at the time.
That's entirely possible.
That was exactly the
thing is, it doesn't matter if she's a slave or not. Whoever owned her at the time that she got pregnant for no reason, if she was all like, I didn't bang nobody, then either that's going to be an extremely big deal, or it's going to be something that she gets beaten by her owner for lying. Because if her former slave master didn't do it, and he's all like, who be messing around with my slaves?
Right.
There's going to be some big deal that's going to end up going down. But no insinuation about any of that.
Right. People are just going to believe that she
people are just going to let that go. No, I don't think you understand.
But I think that is exactly. I think they weren't intending on you thinking so heavily about this.
I don't think they intended anyone to think about it at all.
Yeah,
because that's one of the main problems is because not thinking about it at all. That's how I got. She just didn't the dude just didn't stick around. That's how I got that, was by not thinking, because that's just it's forms of words that I've heard from single mothers for years.
Right.
It's the exact same thing.
But I think, you said, I don't know if it was their intention to suggest immaculate conception, but I think that's exactly what their intention was, because it's pretty much confirmed in Qui-Gon's response to her saying that.
Is it?
Yeah, he essentially says, like, oh, well, the Force works in mysterious ways. Or, I don't know what word for word his response is, but from what I'm remembering, that's essentially what you get out of Qui-Gon is just like, oh, well, this kid came out.
I only remember his response being a very sagely and a head nod. That's what I remember him doing. Like,
maybe that's what you were doing.
I don't know.
I don't know. My thing is that I think he left it up for whatever interpretation we wanted. They allude to later in the movie. I don't remember if it was that movie or a different movie, but they allude to the Force giving life and taking life.
Yeah, they talk about it quite a bit in the third
three,
movie.
yeah. But other than that, something bad they did in Episode 1. They killed Darth Maul. They didn't actually kill him, but that was a thing that happened later.
Right.
That is.
But you take your cool new Darth Vader substitute and you cut him in half in your very first movie. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, Darth Maul should have been a consistent, like, harrying villain throughout the trilogy. He should have been Dooku, essentially.
I agree.
Yeah.
He should have been the guy that, troubles Obi-Wan throughout the movies. That escaped from Naboo after killing his master, and basically is Obi-Wan's story arc of having to deal with, the pull of the dark side in his sort of seeking revenge for his master against this dude that killed him and ran away.
You know how easily they could have put that story within the council, like every time Maul got cited.
They could have literally been chasing Darth Maul, who was just a red herring, as Sidious was doing all of his stuff in the background.
Well, and the reason what I was trying to get at was, like, as much as Obi-Wan wants to go get revenge for his mentor, the council keeps pushing them further and further away from any sighting of Darth Maul.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
to keep him, like, away from the dark shadow.
At the same time, as far as they knew, Darth Maul was in league with the Separatists because they both showed up on Naboo at the same time and opposed the Queen and the Jedi at the same time. He essentially split their forces off by being there, and they were harrying them the entire time they were trying to deal with the Separatists. So as far as they knew, Darth Maul was in league with the Separatists, which he actually was. But that's not really the point. They could have legitimately put him in Dooku's shoes. They could have made him, the general of the Separatists or the leader of the Separatists, and him trying to bring back the dark side and using the Separatists to destroy the Republic and the Jedi, and just have him be that thing.
The story would have been completely different.
I really feel like the only reason they put Dooku in there was just for, like, a notch under Anakin's belt for the third movie.
I don't know, man, because it feels a little strange, because Dooku, like, if you watch the Clone Wars TV show, they do a lot more with Dooku, and he feels like he fits.
Yeah.
But if you just watch the movies, he almost feels like he doesn't really fit at all. He just sort of feels like he got like sort of crowbarred in the second movie.
Right, and especially since they quickly introduced, like, Grievous and stuff too. So
yeah,
it's
they just like swiftly introduced Grievous in the third movie to take over from Dooku because he dies.
Right.
But in the second movie, they also throw in this weird red herring of Dooku trying to get Obi-Wan onto his side. This makes zero sense, because there's really no, like, we have no idea what would have happened if he was able to convince Obi-Wan that there really is an evil Sith, and join me. And because what if Obi-Wan had said yes? If he had said yes, joined up with Dooku, and then Dooku's master is now the person they're opposing? Is that would that have been a thing? Would Dooku have, like, gone and fought Sidious? Or
especially considering, like, he's Qui-Gon's master,
right,
and Yoda's apprentice,
like, like it's just a strange thing they sort of like throw in. But they don't expect anyone to think about what would have happened if he had gone that route, because it's just something you know is not going to happen.
Yeah, they just expect you to be like, oh, well, this guy is just the bad guy. He's just devious. He doesn't mean that.
But the thing is, at the same time, we know he's the bad guy, and therefore we're not listening to him. But he doesn't say anything that's incorrect.
Right.
Because when he's talking about the Sith that's high up in the Senate and trying to control everything and making all this stuff happen, well, yeah, all that's true.
Yeah.
We know it's true. We're
the,
watching Sidious
and
do
in
it.
The
Yes.
end, whether or not this story is changed because Obi-Wan decides, okay, yeah, I'll believe you or whatnot.
Well,
in the end, in the third one, I think it would have been nice for them to have had a point where, like, Obi-Wan's like, well, damn, he was right.
And the truth is, I mean, I don't know if they made Plagueis, the book Plagueis, into canon or non-canon, but
it was canon at the time. It's not anymore.
No.
So
yeah.
Plagueis was still around during the first couple episodes. Plagueis doesn't actually get killed by Sidious until
like the end of of episode 1.
Is it the end of episode 1?
It's right before he gets named as Chancellor.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean, Plagueis was there, and the thing is that, and if you, in the other books that I've read about Darth Maul, is that Darth Maul was hidden from Plagueis. Like, Sidious trained Darth Maul on the side without Plagueis knowing.
So, I mean, there's a lot of that in
the whole Sith lore, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Because
the only one I can think of that got trained that wasn't held as a secret in canon is Ventress.
Yeah.
But Ventress wasn't trained to be a Sith, she was trained to be an assassin.
Well, and that's kind of the story they try and say for Maul, too, because eventually in Plagueis, I don't know about if the consistency adds up with the other books that has, Maul's story, but Sidious actually tells Plagueis about Maul at some point before the events of his death against Obi-Wan.
And that he was being trained to be an assassin.
Yeah, they both kind of just talk shit on him there. They're just like, oh, well, he ain't nobody, nothing anyways. And when you get Sidious's perspective on Maul throughout the book anyways, that's kind of the opinion about him, is that he ain't nothing.
He has a little bit.
He's got combat skill.
Yeah, they treat him as a rabid dog. And the thing is, that's kind of consistent with how he's treated in the shows and stuff where he shows up. Mm-hmm. So, like, he shows up in the Clone Wars TV show. He talks a good game about feeling the Force and stuff like that, but when push comes to shove, he just wants to hit stuff with a stick.
Right. Well,
he's just
that's what he does.
Sidious
aggressive.
Sidious made comments. I don't remember in what book I read, whether it was Plagueis or one of the Darth Maul books I read, but he made comments like he is not very strong in the Force.
Yeah,
but he
can tap into the hate and empower.
Yeah, but what
himself.
You said, that the part of the Force that's with him is his combat ability.
Yes,
yeah. Well,
his combat comes from the Force, but he's not a full Force, like Dark Force user like Sidious or Plagueis.
I wish that at least some of Plagueis was canon, because it would make the kind of boring story that they set up in the prequels more acceptable. Especially with all
you guys haven't seen the Clone Wars TV show, have you?
Not all the way through.
Not all. I'm about season 4.
The Clone Wars made me think more kindly on the prequels.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that get set up in the prequels that you sort of look at and go, that's dumb, and then the Clone Wars TV show does something with it, and you go, all right, I can take it, I guess.
Well, and they do
because they do like entire episodes about like Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my god, I hate this character. And then at the end of those episodes, I go, all right, he's not the worst thing in the world.
Right.
Like I remember the episode with Jar Jar Binks where they run into like his love interest.
Oh really? I didn't.
Or the episode where
they think he
gets mistaken for a Jedi.
That one's great.
That one's hilarious because it's just his extreme hijinks and
Yeah.
basically his plot armor
Yeah.
allows people around him to think he's a Jedi.
His gag plot
Yeah.
armor, because that's what Jar Jar is.
Well, yeah,
the gag
Jar
being
Jar
introduced.
was put in just for humor. I mean, and that's just it. Is like if you really look at the original trilogy, I know we're bumping forward, but the original trilogy, a lot of the humor in the original trilogy was C-3PO
C-3, yeah, and then the sarcasm of Han
And what's
Solo,
and
funny,
Han.
and then yeah,
What's funny about that is I've seen people who like Jar Jar Binks hate C-3PO because their forms of humor are completely different. They're opposite. They're opposed to each other completely.
yeah, one's
Yeah.
dumb, one's smart.
Well, one's dry, one's slapstick.
Yeah,
Yes.
right,
And if,
right.
if they would have made Jar Jar a little more dry humor like C-3PO, I think he would have been accepted by more of the Star Wars community
Yeah.
than he has been. But because all of his hijinks are slapstick, it's like, okay, slapstick can only go so far.
Slapstick is not something you generally see a whole lot of in the other Star Wars, except like you saw a little bit with like the Ewoks.
yeah, just
But that was
barely.
that
though.
was just enough there
That,
to,
but that was like
to keep it-
2 or 3 instances.
to
Yeah.
keep a very
You know, where they
keep
think-
a very
they think-
Jar Jar can't have a scene without falling down or sticking his tongue in something.
right.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
and
the
the Ewoks
the
were,
whole gag slapstick deal with C-3PO is they thought that he was a god, and then like Luke raises him up in the chair, like that works.
I was mostly talking about like some of the small instances where like an Ewok will fall over or get knocked off of something. And it's
well,
like,
I'm thinking the whole battle of it, on the moon of Endor.
that wasn't so slapsticky. That was just sort of like
like a
weird,
lot of the
I
stuff
guess.
that they did, a lot of the
It
little
was
things
just
that they did to fight the
Showcasing
troopers.
the Ewoks, the way that they do their thing.
Yeah, they have the little.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had their funny moments, but the thing is that it wasn't quite as boom in your face as Jar Jar.
right. You can kind of ignore it. Like it's just sort of like you got your
yeah,
cute
it's
little
kinda
bear
there.
people for
It's a little
the sake of being cute
lighthearted.
little bear people.
It's a
Right.
little lighthearted.
But-
Keep the full drama of what's going on in that part of the third movie to,
But in Plagueis, I wish, there's quite a bit of what they do in Plagueis. Like they actually go a lot more into the idea of Anakin being an immaculate conception. They go more into why Dooku's part of the whole story in the prequels, and even Maul, and they tie in a lot more interesting background stuff
And in the movies,
to the first movie specifically.
the thing is
that makes
the
everything that
movies-
follows a little bit more
the movies, the
tolerable.
more I think about it, the movies are very vague and like it seems like
Empty bags.
they seem like there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that they want us to draw our own conclusions to.
Yeah, they don't give you any like the heavy details. They just give you the broad strokes and just like sort of like carry you through the movie.
Yeah.
Um,
So
it's
Well-
like trying to understand all of Jaws just by riding the Universal Studios ride. It's like okay, there's a shark. All right, well you got the gist of it. Just go. Just
Right.
yeah, well, I mean,
So-
off topic, talking about Jaws is like the best part about Jaws was the drama building up to seeing a shark that you don't see through
yeah.
the first
Freshwater.
3/4 of the movie.
Right.
So we went over a bit of the Clone Wars TV show. So we're still in chronological order, basically.
We're still basically building
So
towards
going
3.
into episode 2, which is Tim's absolute favorite movie of them all.
For sure.
That was sarcasm.
The best
if you didn't
part.
catch that.
The best part about episode 2 is you get to see Natalie Portman midriff.
You said that in the last episode.
Yeah.
I did, but it's worth repeating.
Yes.
She
was my first childhood crush, by
Yes.
Yeah.
Full on Natalie Portman. Yeah.
Mine
And it's
because
because
I'm
of Star
older.
Wars.
Mine because I'm older was definitely Princess Leia in metal bikini.
See, yeah, and that's the generational difference.
Yes.
It's like y'all had Princess Leia, meanwhile my 5-year-old ass went to the theater and
Well,
fell in love with Padme
that I was-
just like Anakin did.
I was very into Days of Thunder, so Nicole Kidman was a thing, and yeah, she's still hot. But anyway,
Yeah,
Anyway.
sorry.
So the worst part about Attack of the Clones is basically everything else. They do a lot to try and ruin Boba Fett. They succeed pretty good at that. They do a lot to try and ruin the whole concept that anyone had of the Clone Wars, because when you heard Clone Wars in the original trilogy, you just sort of assumed that the clones are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And they could have easily went in that direction, because they tried droids in the first movie, they failed horribly. They could have easily gone to, and so they're going to use clones because you can't shut them off.
Yeah, I agree.
That would have been a way better concept, because now you have to pull together an actual Republic army.
Well, and the thing is that
for me
to face the endless hordes of clones.
Like
See,
I
the
said,
thing is that-
I was younger, and even for me, I remember being like, "Wait a second, these are the same troopers. Why are they the good guys and not the bad guys?"
That's exactly where I was about to head.
Why is this happening this way?
That's exactly
You
where I was about
established
to head.
them as the bad guys in the
Right.
first trilogy.
But if you go into some of the still canon backstory for Star Wars, the majority of stormtroopers aren't clones anymore.
Right? Yeah.
And haven't been for a while.
After
they go
just
over
about
that a lot
after
later.
But the majority of the ones that are still clones are actually Vader's 501st, his personal army.
There's actually a line.
So like all the guys that show up on the Tantive 4 at the beginning of A New Hope, most of those guys are all clones.
There's actually a line in one of my favorite TV shows, How I Met Your Mother, where Lily thinks that stormtroopers are robots. It's not a robot. Like, so wait, you're telling me when they blew up the Death Star, they knew that there was a bunch of people on there? Like, yeah, it's the Death Star, babe. They knew what they were getting into. So it's canonly known that stormtroopers.
It was the Death Star of peace. I mean, come on now. It was.
Yeah.
It's.
But anyways, sorry, I derailed us.
The Attack of the Clones is a very strange movie. A lot of the acting is stilted. A lot of the set pieces are sort of crammed in. The story is very strange.
It doesn't seem like it has a lot of real good flow.
It really does.
Because it doesn't. You have so at the beginning, someone's trying to assassinate Senator Amidala because
she's no longer a queen.
Because, like I said, monarchies are democratic, I guess.
Yeah. Again, we go back to this nonsense.
So they try and assassinate Senator Amidala. They track the assassin. It's an assassin. Whoop-de-doo. Who would have figured? And then the assassin gets assassinated by an assassin, so they have to follow the assassin.
Follow the assassin of the assassin to the assassin's
lair.
So
what you're telling me is
where
that
the assassin is building an army of assassins.
The name of the movie should have been
Follow the Assassins.
Rise of the Assassins.
Yes.
It should have been called String of Assassin, and you would just follow the string of assassins as they're assassinated by their next assassin. They have to
Star Wars, love and assassination, because basically there's two stories going on throughout this movie.
Yeah.
There's Obi-Wan following the assassins, and then Anakin
and Padme doing nothing.
Yeah, doing nothing, hiding from assassins.
Like...
And then
all Padme and Anakin are really doing is really badly flirting.
Yes.
And establishing things that need to be established for future movies. That's all they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Move the plot forward however roughly you have to get it done.
No,
get it done.
They're basically just doing callbacks for the sake of saying, see, that didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. We have explanations.
It's like Owen and Beru, that didn't come out of nowhere. See, they went to Tatooine for no reason.
Yeah.
And then, Anakin's mom still being alive? No, of course not. They went to
Tatooine so Anakin can show his shadow within.
And then him killing sand people... which doesn't really affect his character at all.
Yeah, I agree. Even
because he killed them all, even the women and the children.
I was just
But
like,
they're sand people.
Yeah,
we've been taught from A New
beginning-
Hope that sand people are very violent individuals, and they all need to be killed anyway.
Right.
I mean, they go into some nuance in some of the books and stuff, but really, like, those aren't canon anymore, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he goes and slaughters all the sand people. He admits his sins to his new girlfriend, and and then it's just sort of forgotten, because after that you go into the Clone Wars TV show. They don't ever mention it. It doesn't affect his character or his attitude or anything. They just sort of ignore that it happened.
Right.
They just skim right over it. And then they get to the third episode, and they're suddenly shocked that he's killing children. He killed an entire tribe of children.
Yes, women and
It
children.
didn't happen but one movie ago.
Right.
But they were younglings.
Yeah.
Like,
I saw something. I think it was a meme where it was just like Anakin driving into heaven, and then another car driving past that car, and they're like staring at him, and then it says all the younglings that he killed in Episode 3, and they're just like, "Wait, what are you doing here, man?"
Oh, I atoned for my sins. They let me in.
Yeah.
But you
But
killed
he
younglings.
saved his
but,
son.
I mean,
He did
again,
what he was supposed to do.
We went over some of the weird inconsistencies about Dooku with Maul.
Yes.
Yeah,
but
I mean, Dooku had his moments for what he was, but I think that if you would have taken Dooku out and just
Dooku
replaced
is a-
him with Maul, I think it would have
They
been
were
better.
both like
it
equally
would
arrogant.
it would have been more solid. It would have been okay. So you wouldn't have to crowbar in Dooku and have everyone know who he is all of a sudden and have never been mentioned before. But just this random guy who left the Jedi Order because that's like a thing that happens apparently, and it's not a big deal. But they
Yeah, this happens a lot all of a sudden, and you act like it's not a big deal.
What are the upsides of being in the Jedi Order? Can someone just tell me what the upsides are? Because
'Cause I'm not-
seriously, when Anakin is making this big fuss about whether or not he wants to get together with Padme, and there's like, they'll kick you out of the Jedi Order if they find out. I was like, what's the big deal? He already knows how to use it. What are they gonna like take the Force out of his head?
Yeah.
Like-
What's the consequence of leaving?
What's
There is none.
Yeah, there's nothing. What are they gonna do? Take his lightsaber? He can just make a new one. Dooku did. It doesn't matter.
Right.
This is true.
Like, there are zero consequences. It's all upsides. Like, suddenly Anakin just gets to be
Yeah,
a stay-at-home parent
we'll
while
train-
his wife runs around being a senator.
We'll train you until you knock up some hot honey, and then you can be a
And then
stay-at-home
we'll
dad.
kick you out, and then you won't have to be worried about all this war crap, and then you won't kill
Yeah,
your
that-
wife, and
that
then,
sounds like
and then
a
you won't
great
become the
idea.
destroyer of the universe. Like, I don't see what the downside is.
Yeah. Worst case scenario is Palpatine comes to find you at your house.
Dooku as a former Jedi, just like, sure, I guess we all could have arrived that that could happen, but when you just throw it in our faces, just all of a sudden it's like, wait, you can just leave? You can just go?
I think they,
Why did
I think they
Anakin
wanted
not
to
just go?
introduce that as a way of like showing the foolishness and the folly and the wrong
Like-
path that the Jedi have taken for it. Essentially the rule of
But,
two to
you know,
work.
what they
But-
could have actually done is they could have kept Maul, had Maul done all the things that Dooku did, and then left Dooku in, and had him be like the guy who accidentally starts converting Anakin to the dark side by telling him all of the bad things that the
About the
Jedi do,
Jedi.
and why he left, and why he decided to go out and be on his own.
Yeah, because the way
Yeah,
they did it,
it could have been more of like the
Right.
a different style of mentor
Where
figure.
it's
instead
not
of
even Dooku specifically trying to convert him to the dark side. It's just Dooku accidentally instilling all this doubt into a Jedi Knight, and making him go, "Oh man, am I doing the right thing?" And then a war breaks out.
One of my biggest problems with the sequel is like, so in the second one, you maybe see Anakin interact with Palpatine like once, and it's like briefly,
Right.
and then in the third one, he's just like, he's the greatest man I've ever met in my life. He's like a father to me. When did that happen?
Yeah,
They were just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is a thing now. by the way.
the second Star Wars kind of does that a lot. So it does that at the very beginning, where they sort of insinuate that because Anakin and Obi-Wan have been together for all this time, that they have this big history, so they're close for a reason.
which is fine.
But then also at the same time, they sort of make Anakin a little shit, and so every time Obi-Wan tells him to do something, he goes, "What? Why? No."
Yeah,
And it's like,
No.
it's like, how did they get through all of these years together
This is
with
true.
Anakin
They're
just being
still,
a dickhead?
They're still bickering at each other after 10 years.
Like they don't seem like brothers or master and apprentice. They seem like a married couple, and
it seems like
one of them saw
Obi-Wan-
the shiny new toaster and he wants it real bad.
Obi-Wan and the rest of the Jedi are just like super, super amused with how much of a shithead that Anakin is, because they're ignoring the fact that this kid's just a bunch of walking red flags.
Yeah,
They're just like, oh, it's real cute when you don't listen to me.
yeah.
What? No, it's not. Like, you just said he's too old, he's got too much anger,
I think-
blah,
I think-
blah,
I
blah.
think that's-
Okay, you can be a Jedi.
I think that's the main reason why Mace Windu kind of very explicitly doesn't like Anakin
Yeah,
very much.
he's the only
Because
one that's real about it.
Like he's the only one that's like, really? You all are just gonna let this happen?
Yeah.
Like, are you seeing this kid? He is such a shithead. None of you are saying anything. You're just letting this. Whatever. I'm just gonna.
He
sit
killed
in my
the
chair.
women and the children, too. Like,
I'm just gonna sit in my chair and skulk. I got a cool lightsaber, and the rest of you are boring.
Yeah.
And
basically.
Uh,
And in the end, he was right. He was right to be all cold and cynical towards Anakin, because if it wasn't for Anakin, then he would not be dead.
right. So I guess we can move on to the third movie.
yeah, move on
We've
to the
kind of
first-
just like touched
So-
on all of them.
So
and-
honestly, Episode 2 gets made a lot better of a movie, in my opinion, by watching the Clone Wars, because it makes Dooku a less crap character.
It
brings back Darth Maul, and it introduces Ventress, who's a really cool character.
yeah, it gives Dooku more of a purpose, and it shows how his role is actually a little different than Maul's.
And it sort of sets up an oppositional sort of thing, because suddenly, instead of there just being two sides, there's like four sides.
Yeah.
Because Ventress is basically eventually by herself, and she
Yeah.
wants to oppose Dooku, but she just sort of opposes the Jedi out of habit. So the three of them might all fight at the same time. Maul is also against the Jedi. He wants to team up with Sidious, but he doesn't like Dooku because Dooku took his place. So he wants to fight Dooku. He doesn't want to fight Palpatine, but he does want to fight Ventress because Ventress is opposed to them, and he'll fight the Jedi because he doesn't like the Jedi. And then just it's everyone just fighting each other in this giant awkward circle. And
But it works.
but it works great
It's so
because
much more
everyone has these
entertaining.
weird motivations that are like overlapping and sort of interlocking, and they just sort of like run
makes
back
it
and forth over
unpredictable.
each other. Yeah, it's sort of like a real conflict.
And doesn't it? I mean, Maul eventually kind of gets like a partner too, doesn't he?
Yeah, his brother,
His
yeah,
brother,
that's what I
yeah.
thought.
his brother Savage.
Yeah,
And his brother has bits of the Force, but he's nowhere near as strong.
His brother has the Force because of witchcraft.
right. Because
That's right.
Something
He's not naturally in tune
Which is
with the Force.
okay. So him having a brother to me is really weird, because in the books that I read, that Darth Maul was created by witches.
created.
So that's kind of a thing. So the Sith witches, which they don't refer to themselves as Sith witches, they refer to themselves
Night
as
Sisters.
the Night Sisters. The Night Sisters and Darth Maul's race are kind of the same thing and kind of not the same thing,
Right.
because there are female versions of Darth Maul, but Ventress's race, which is the Night Sisters, they have an actual race name, but they're basically the same thing as Maul,
But
somehow. I think it's
they both
Mother,
come from Dathomir.
So Mother Townsend or whatever her name is, the
Yeah.
leader of the Night Sisters. That's Darth Maul's mom, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they never really explain like any of that in the
It's a
books.
very
They just
muddled
say that
kind of history. Between
All I got,
The thing,
all I got
it's,
was
it's hard. It's hard to figure out what when they're using like tribal speak, like
Yeah.
you are my brother in the tribe, or you are my sister in the tribe, or you are
Right.
It's hard to differentiate when they're doing that versus when they're actually talking about like blood relations.
Yeah, but
Sure.
it's essentially like the sisters do like witchcraft.
They're Sith witches.
Yeah, Sith witches.
And that's another actual fun faction because they're also in league with Palpatine and Dooku until they're opposed to each other and they go to war also.
And that I know some parts because we've actually watched like some of the later episodes of the Clone Wars, like where Yoda goes on.
Yeah,
his
Yoda
little
goes to the planet where all the
escapade.
Midichlorians come from.
Yeah, and like they actually establish some of the things that are in non-canon lore into the canon lore. Like they acknowledge the existence of Bane and the Rule of Two, which I think it's cool, especially since like we already know about the Night Sisters and Bane's apprentice in the in the non-canon things is the Sith sorceress.
Well, there's a bunch of weird
a lot of cool things.
There's a bunch of weird things that they wanted to introduce from out of canon into canon using the Clone Wars. Like during that whole scene with Bane and all them, they were actually going to also show you like the Force ghost of Revan from the Knights of the Old Republic
right?
games.
Yeah.
They decided to cut it out because they had an idea for a small story arc with Revan and his Force ghost or something, but they never got around to it. So they decided to save it for that, and they never did it.
Right.
So
that would be amazing. Though.
that would have been really neat. But so the Clone Wars does a lot to help Attack of the Clones. So if you haven't watched it, go ahead and do that because it's a really neat show.
I've been working on it for a while, but it's kind of slow at the beginning.
I think I've gone through.
It's not really slow at the beginning. It's kid friendly at the beginning.
Yeah, it's hard to pay
And the thing
attention.
is, like the very first episode with Yoda hanging out with those clones and having that
great.
race
Yeah, it's
thing like that was a neat episode and it was a neat concept. The main problem that I see a lot of people have is the Clone Wars is not in chronological order.
No.
If you want to watch it in chronological order, you have to find the chronological order online and then just sort of shuffle up watching all the show.
Story.
It's backstory.
Yeah, it's just they just go through it randomly.
Yeah.
But especially once you get to the later seasons, like season 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, it gets to be a really, really fun show. I mean, before that, it was a good show, but it was very kid friendly, and you had to be aware of that. It grows up a little bit because, like, especially when they jump to season 4 and Ahsoka grows up, they do the little time jump.
Oh, okay.
And she's like 3 or 4 years older. So they jump from the beginning of the war to closer to the end of the war.
Yeah, and they're getting closer to the Revenge of the Sith, and
because the last season basically takes place like around the movie.
Right.
Like the finale is, if I remember correctly, the finale is supposed to be
the new finale or the old.
The
finale?
new finale is basically Ahsoka escaping Order 66.
Okay.
Nice.
Because she was hanging out with Rex and a bunch of other clones.
Gotcha.
That's cool. I like that. See, yeah, I want to get to the end parts of it, so I gotta keep powering through the beginning.
But if we go to,
I just haven't had a chance to really sit and watch it. So.
If we go to Revenge of the Sith, I really like that movie in a lot of ways. There's a lot more heavy emotion. They do sort of gloss over things that they should have expanded upon, like Anakin getting drawn toward the dark side.
Yeah.
But a lot of the cinematography and the acting in the third movie, I think, is a lot better.
Way better. I agree.
So, like, just the things that Hayden Christensen is a good actor, Natalie Portman is a good actor. The things they're able to portray without saying anything is great.
Yeah.
So,
we
like,
discussed that in the other podcast too.
Yeah.
The facial reactions, I think, are the best in the third one. Now, there are some good parts about 3. Now, the very beginning, you start out and it's huge, like, automatic.
Yeah.
Blow crap up. Things are intense. You gotta go.
I will say this about its lightsaber battle. So the Duel of Fates was basically a Gucci bag with nothing in it.
Yes.
Using our bag analogy from the last episode about Star Wars.
Gucci bag.
The thing is, the lightsaber battle at the end of Revenge of the Sith is an even bigger, more expensive Gucci bag, but at least it's got some lip balm in there.
Right.
Like, it's carrying something.
Yeah.
It's just too big and too elaborate for it to really hit.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with the prequels is that we already know what's going to happen, so I feel like they were just like, well, the audience already knows that we're eventually going to get here, so we're just going to lazily move that way.
They're not really lazily moving that way. They could have had a battle that was, heavy and emotional and dramatic, but instead they made it big and flashy and really, really long.
Yeah.
Like, that was an extended battle. Like, when they're crawling up that thing that's floating down the river of lava and they're still swinging at each other, and I was like, dude, seriously?
Yeah.
Like, there are so many unnecessary sections of this fight that you just want to have in here for the sake of, well, we gotta spend money on a set piece.
Right.
Like...
Yeah, they could have done more of a dramatic style of fight there.
They could have literally had the entire fight take place on that platform that they start on, where the ship lands, and just had this really intense, hard fought battle,
focusing on each shot against each other. Yeah, do it more anime style. Like focus in on each shot against each other, get real close. And,
run slow mo and have sparks flying. And
this whole movie we've successfully skated by on like Hayden Christensen making brooding faces and thinking about things.
Right.
And
they just skip all of that. When they could have used so much more of that in that last fight.
Yeah.
They abandoned it right there. Really, really heavy.
They abandoned it right there because that scene where like Anakin is on his own and Padme's on her own and they're both like staring off into the distance.
Right.
That's heavy. Super heavy. And that was right before that battle. And then they were just like, this whole method we've been using this whole time, out the window now.
Right.
We're going to just throw in flashy stuff.
And then they basically threw themselves into a corner where they have to kill Padme and completely make, Leia's remembrance of her mother at the end of Return of the Jedi kind of
not true.
Yeah, like you have to sort of make up your own canon of, well, she used the Force to see her when she was a baby.
Yeah, you gotta start trying to.
No, when you're making excuses for your movie, that's called an inconsistency.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and they like you said, they pigeonholed themselves into having to kill Padme the way they did.
They did really, really bad
into a lot of things in the prequels.
But I still think that Revenge of the Sith has more good than it has bad. It's probably the best of the prequel movies.
I agree.
in terms of cinematography and in terms of acting and in terms of a lot of how they did their story. Even though their story still isn't perfect, it still isn't the greatest thing in the world.
A great deal of each trilogy, and I'm even, no offense to you guys, I'm even saying this about the original trilogy, is kind of, you spend the first two movies wondering when things are going to like click into place with the story.
Well, the original trilogy is different from the other ones because it wasn't originally made to be a trilogy.
Yeah.
It wasn't made to be a trilogy until it was.
Well, and the thing is that, again, so all of us kind of know where things were going to lead because those movies were released before a lot of us were born. Like, the very first Star Wars was released a year before I was born.
Right.
The second Star Wars, I was like 3, maybe 4 years old.
Oh, it was what, 77, 79, and 81?
Was it 79? I thought it was it might have been 79. 77, 79, and 81,
or 82, maybe.
Somewhere along
that was like 77, 81, and 83.
That might be closer to it. But either
I have no idea. But
the thing is that I was young when they were first released, so I didn't even. They were already out, so a lot of us knew the storyline of what Star Wars, the storyline, before we watched it. Like, I'm sure before you guys watched the original trilogy, you guys kind of had an idea going in what was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
we all knew about the awesomeness that happens at the end of Empire where, you know,
Yeah.
he says, you know, you killed my father. He goes, I am your father. You know, they're like, oh my god!
Right, that's so
Like-
ingrained in popular culture that you have to actually like
I
look really, really hard to find someone who gets surprised by that twist.
honestly
Yeah.
don't remember my introduction to Star Wars. I don't remember a time where I didn't know anything.
Yeah,
about
I don't
Star Wars.
remember a time where I didn't know that Darth Vader was Luke's dad.
Yeah, I don't
Right.
remember. Well, I mean, yeah,
So, and
I
that's
just
how-
knew.
So if I'm introduced to somebody who's never seen Star Wars, which it still happens, I mean, because
9
especially
times
the
out of
younger
10, they're
generation-
still going to know that Darth Vader's Luke's
So I
dad.
asked him, I said,
Yeah.
do you know the twist in Empire? And most of them are like, you mean where Luke finds out that Vader's his dad? I'm like, yeah. If that's the case, then I want to get them to watch the movies, I'll go ahead and put it in chronological
Okay,
order. Since
so-
they already know that Luke is
Yeah.
Vader's,
But-
you can might as well just watch it so you can get all the information.
But my point about the original trilogy is A New Hope they could have literally made A New Hope, never made any other Star Wars movie. It's a complete movie, it's all on its own, everyone has their
Yeah.
character development, you know, like Luke goes on his journey, he goes
Yeah.
from being a farm boy to being someone who's in touch with the Force. Han goes from being a smuggler who only cares about himself to you know,
Yeah.
being a hero who comes and helps his friends. Leia goes from being in a cell to not being in a cell.
Well, the original trilogy definitely suffers the least from that problem.
well,
compared to the other
it
three.
does suffer from issues. It does suffer from some really weird issues that I have seen in other movies, but I think the Star Wars movies are some of the worst at this, and it's expressing time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think we talked about this in our last Star Wars episode, but it's
We did, yeah.
a lot of Empire Strikes Back. Its time is nebulous. We have no idea what scale
Right.
its time is on.
You don't know how long Leia and
And
Han are on the
Alden.
Falcon getting to Sky City. You don't know how long Luke is sitting on Dagobah.
You don't even know how long it takes Luke to get to Dagobah. You know?
Right.
It starts with Hoth,
Yeah,
and you know we don't know how long it's been since the last time we saw these guys, even from the beginning of the
Right.
movie.
Well,
You
and that's just it. Is like, yeah,
We don't know
Luke-
why they're there.
Luke was given an X-wing at the end of the first of A New Hope, and was thrown in. I
Yeah.
mean, he was Red 5,
Yeah.
so that means he's like fifth in line in his squadron.
yeah.
But by by Empire, he's the leader of
Yeah.
he's a leader of a squadron. Now
Yeah.
they don't ever say the name of that squadron. We all know it later as Rogue Squadron,
Right.
but Rogue Squadron was a squadron before Luke took
Luke
it over.
took
and
over, yeah.
Rogue Squadron eventually got taken over by Wedge, didn't it?
I think
Yeah,
so.
I think so.
But regardless, like Empire, I've seen a lot of people try and break down how long Empire should be, but a lot of their sources that they have to use to try and figure out this timeline are very strange because
They're-
you have to try and figure out where Han and Leia were versus where
Cloud City is.
Bespin is, which is where
Yeah.
Cloud City is, and then you have to try and figure out how fast they're going, and therefore how long that takes for them to get from that asteroid that they were, the asteroid field that they were
I
hiding
thought-
in.
And then
Weren't
if
they
you think
still
about it,
right off of Hoth though? Because they never got into Lightspeed when they came off of Hoth.
yeah.
They never got into Lightspeed, but they were running from the Empire. They don't say how long that chase took.
Right.
They went into that asteroid field. They hid in the asteroid field. They ended up attaching themselves to that ship, and
Now-
we don't know how long the ship was looking for them.
And seemingly to me, since we don't really know how long either journey took, it seems like it took them a lot longer to get to Cloud City than it took Luke to get to Cloud City from Dagobah. Now, then we'd have to break down how far away
the
Dagobah
best
is
guess
from
that
Cloud
I've
City.
heard is it's somewhere between 1 and 3 months.
That's
Let's
at Lightspeed? Because
To
No,
get-
1 and 3 months at that not being able to do light speed.
from
from where they were to Bespin.
Okay.
Because which would make a lot of sense because that would give Luke between 1 and 3 months to train with Yoda,
right,
and get somewhere. So that makes sense, but they have no expression of that in the movie. They don't show any real time transition. They just sort of like get stuck into it
because there's not really anything else going on with any other.
There's nothing for you to contrast.
No other part of the rebellion.
Like they could have fixed that. They could have fixed that by having like one flash over to like literally anyone we know in the rebellion.
Yeah.
It's like, has anyone heard from Han or Princess Leia? They're like, no. And it's like, they've been gone for X amount of time.
Easy. Yeah.
Well, and then
Akbar, just throw Akbar in there. Just
and the thing is
did
Luke tell anybody that he was going to Dagobah?
Probably not, other than Leia and Han.
So they would also be like, "Oh, where's Luke?
Yeah.
Where's Han? Where's Princess Leia? I mean, where's our
like? Was the communications on Han's ship busted? Could he not try and like phone a friend to like give him a tow?
No, the rebellion just let their like 6 most important chess pieces go do their own thing without for explanation.
Time.
Yeah, they're just like, oh yeah. See you guys when we need you, I guess. Hey, did we get their phone number?
Right.
They're not. Are they? How are they going to call us when they need us?
Right.
It's like we're all going to meet back up. Where? All right. Let's see you. Let's just get out.
Yeah, we'll meet back up. Where? We'll see you later.
Where? When? Yes.
So don't get me wrong. There are issues in Empire which are mostly things you just sort of gloss over because you're following the movie, and the movie does move pretty fast
for sure.
And like I said in the other episode, a lot of people like Empire because that's where the big story, you know, the big, you know, reveal of who Vader is and blah blah blah. That to me wasn't as big of a deal as like just some of the cool stuff that they had on Hoth.
Yeah,
I mean the Tom-Toms, the
they did some really cool stuff.
The really awesome. I mean that little battle, it wasn't even very long, but it had some cool pieces in that.
Yeah, they took down the AT-AT.
They had the AT-ATs. They had you know just a bunch of cool because at that point we had never seen an AT-AT, nothing that big.
Right.
Because think about how big that thing had to be.
Yeah.
Right.
For them, and it's like imagine. This little like guy with the blaster, looking up at this AT-AT like, oh shoot!
Yeah.
Now what do I do? You know, I can't blast it with my blaster; it's armored. You know.
Yeah. So I mean, there are. Empire is great. You know, no one's going to say that it's not a good movie, but there are problems with it that a lot of Star Wars fans ignore. That really shouldn't be ignored because, especially when later on in the sequel trilogy, they try and emulate it. Well, they try and emulate it whole hog, but they just gloss over the weak points of Empire, or they extrapolate upon the weak points of Empire, and it makes it even worse.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like in A Last Jedi it's a lot like Empire in its weak points, and I think that they tried to make up for the fact that there wasn't what else is going on with everybody else.
Last Jedi has an even worse time nebulability problem
right.
than Empire does.
And in the end, they just make everything pointless. Because you're watching the whole movie assuming that this is all going to be like for a good reason, that everybody's doing what they're doing.
We could jump straight into Last Jedi if you wanted to. I was going to save it for later, but I have huge problems with Last Jedi and just consistency problems.
Well, a great majority of the talking that we spent on the last Star Wars stuff was like The Last Jedi and Attack of the Clones and why they suck.
Right. Well, we need to push anyway. We need to kind of push forward. So, Empire, Return of the Jedi was great for me because it kind of brings a lot of stuff.
Its dramatic moments are some of the best dramatic moments
Right.
in the original trilogy.
Like, we talk about saber battles, and that last saber battle with Luke and Vader, that is not even really like a battle.
yeah,
I mean, Luke hides for how long from Vader while Vader's running around with his saber just hitting stuff because there's nothing to
they
do.
do more storytelling in the duels with
They
the
do.
original trilogy. Like,
yeah, they use the duel as basically a set piece to tell the story.
Right.
both of them
Yeah.
that Luke and Vader have in both Empire and Return of the Jedi are like that, and it tells the story a hell of a lot better.
Right, because they have dialogue during these battles, and that's the one thing that the prequel trilogies don't have a lot of
Well, other
dialogue
than Dooku
during battle.
constantly trying to talk smack on Anakin, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's not the same kind of dialogue. The
Yeah,
dialogue
well,
that
like
we-
Vader's
But,
talking
again-
crap
again-
on Luke, and it's working. You know,
Yeah.
like he's getting in Luke's head.
Again,
you know, like
if we had had more dialogue during Revenge of the Sith, that battle could have been a lot better, because instead of spending all this time jumping from set piece to set piece for no reason,
yeah,
you could have legitimately stayed in the same place, added more dialogue. You could have cut the time of the battle in half. It still would have been impressive. It still could have ended around the same way. But instead of having to force your audience to sit there for an extended period of time and try and make them care about it that whole long period of time, you make them care about it for a shorter period of time so its ending lands better.
yeah.
And then I think there's a huge difference in the whole just dynamic of the duels in the trilogy, the original trilogy, compared to the other trilogies, because I don't know, they established Luke as an underdog so much better than I think that they do for Rey and for Anakin as their heroes for their trilogy.
Rey never really
Because-
seems like an underdog.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. She seems like she's like a gifted
At the,
prodigy,
at the beginning,
and
of,
she can
at the
handle
beginning
herself
of,
in
of
every
The Force
situation.
Awakens, she almost feels more like a victim of herself.
Yeah,
Like, they make her seem so capable that the only reason why she's sitting around being homeless and scavenging parts for food
Is
is
because
because
she
she
doesn't wanna
doesn't
let go.
feel like doing anything else.
yeah. She doesn't want to let go of the
Like, it's
mystery of her past or whatever.
it's really, really strange. So they make her feel like the only reason why she's there is because she doesn't feel like doing anything else. They drag her off somewhere else. She's extremely capable, fine. But then they take they do the Darth Maul problem again, but make it worse. Instead of having Kylo Ren be a Vader figure that will harry her throughout the entire trilogy, they kind of make her a Darth Maul, where, you know, is defeated in the very first movie and therefore is no longer a threat. But in the prequel trilogy, at least they had the decency to throw him down a shaft and act like he was dead for 3 movies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
But instead, in the sequel trilogy, she just sort of like cuts his face and they leave him alive, and now he will continue to harry her, but is not really a threat because
yeah. They just
he
established
got
her.
his ass kicked.
Yeah, by somebody with no training.
Right, and he had all that
Yeah,
training with Luke
in the
beforehand.
original-
He got trained by
trilogy.
Luke, he got trained by Snoke, he got trained by everybody, and then, you know, this chick shows up, never handled a lightsaber before, kicks the crap out of him, and fine. You want to do the Darth Maul? Do the Darth Maul. Kick his ass, kick him the hell out of here, introduce
Yeah.
a new bad guy in the second movie. Don't just keep him around.
They do such a better job at appealing to you on Luke's behalf in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's easier for you to see yourself as being on Luke's side because they paint Vader as being so indomitable and
Right.
unbeatable, and Luke's just like this kid that doesn't really have a whole lot under his belt compared to his enemy.
Right.
You
And,
know?
like, Vader is this giant, intimidating presence that shows up. Everyone listens to him. You know, everyone's afraid of him except for Leia, who's defiant.
Yeah.
And, you know, Vader walks around. He chokes people that you know that talk back to him, even if they're on his side. You know, he only listens to very certain people, and only because he feels like it. You never get the idea that he's listening to them because intimidated by them or because they outrank him. You get like when Tarkin tells him to let that guy go when they're having that big meeting in the Death Star. Vader he just lets him go with like contempt, or
he's just
as
like,
you wish,
whatever.
And it's like this guy matters so little to me that fine, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. If he lives, oh well. If he dies, oh well.
But Kylo Ren, you have a similar situation that you could get from a Vader, where they go, "We didn't do the thing that you told us to do," and instead he just like throws a tantrum.
And bashes his
bashes
helmet.
Through. Well, he has a tantrum and he like destroys a console with a lightsaber.
Yeah,
and it's like, what's
that's
the
just
point?
going to deter yourself even further. Don't you need that for something?
Like that console obviously did something,
right?
You're just gonna have to have a stormtrooper fix it now.
Yeah.
No, that maintenance guys.
No, but then the story of Luke is
they'll
way
get the
more
drywaller to fix it.
There's like way more natural growth for Luke, because the first time that he faces Vader, it's like the story they're telling is that he's not freaking ready for Vader.
Yeah,
and
he gets his ass whipped.
He's they're more or less correct in telling that story, because he gets his hand chopped off, and then it basically seems like as indomitable and scary as Vader is, if it wasn't for Vader pushing Luke. Yeah. Luke wouldn't have gotten to where he is in Return of the Jedi.
There are certain things that people complain about from Force Awakens that I'm willing to dismiss and willing to just go ahead and accept. Okay, so like she knows how to fight. Sure, we get shown this. She knows how to fight. That's fine. She knows how to fly a ship. Well, you know what? Maybe she does, because. Like they don't go over how she learned to fly or why she knows how to fly.
How she learned how to fight.
They do. Well, I mean, she lives by herself. There's a bunch of ne'er-do-wells.
That can be easily explained.
She learns how to fly. We don't know why she learned how to fly or who taught her how to fly. We know that she knows ships.
Yeah.
Because she has to salvage from ships, and in movie logic, that automatically means you know ships.
Yeah.
Even though in real life, it would literally just be, I know if I can find a thing that looks like this, they'll pay me money for it.
Right.
Like, that's how it would work in real life.
Exactly. You're salvaging parts. You're not building them.
Right.
And she doesn't like.
But if we use movie logic, then sure, she's a full blown mechanic.
Yeah.
But how that translates into flying a ship, I can't really tell you, because just because you're a mechanic doesn't make you a NASCAR driver.
Yeah.
Well, right.
We'll allow it.
What ships? I mean, if she's never left the planet, what ships has she ever flown anyway?
Exactly. But the thing is, she wouldn't necessarily have to have left the planet. She might know how a navigation system works, and she might know how to fly a ship. These two things are ancillarily related to what happens in the movie, but fine, I'm willing to excuse it. We can just move straight on to the next inconsistency. Just how she uses the Force and how she learns how to use the Force doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because she's obviously never practiced how to use the mind trick, because she doesn't ever talk to anybody.
Yeah.
She doesn't talk to anybody. She doesn't associate with anybody. She literally only talks to the dude that she gives parts for food.
Yeah.
She doesn't associate with anyone else. She doesn't socialize.
She didn't even have a friend until BB-8 rolled up on her.
Right. Yeah. So it's not like she was accidentally, mind tricking people her whole life or something. No, if that was the case, then she would have more than scraps to eat every night.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
I had huge problems with that, and the way they eventually just explain that all away is that she's a Palpatine, and that's just not good.
And the thing is, I can crap on Force Awakens for a while longer, and I'm still going to say it's the movie I have the least amount of problems with for the entire sequel trilogy. It's the movie that I thought, with all of its issues, still introduced enough interesting plot points that if they expanded on and concluded throughout the trilogy, it could have been worthwhile, but they didn't. They made Last Jedi instead. Which is a sequel to a movie that I guess was a rough draft of Force Awakens that we never got to see, because these two movies are not related.
Right.
Yeah. No.
But my biggest thing in Last Jedi that I find to be a logical inconsistency that I've seen so many people go back and forth on this point. I don't understand why no one just uses the one example that makes it just dumb. The end when Admiral Holdo goes into Lightspeed and takes out the entire armada, basically, by smashing in through them all. Mm-hmm. And you have guys on one side saying, well, you can't do that because, in Lightspeed you don't hit things. And if you could do that, then you could literally just make a fleet of droid ships that just launch themselves at things
you do.
in Lightspeed.
You do hit things in Lightspeed.
How do you hit things in Lightspeed?
I can prove it. I can prove it in 2 ways using 2 different movies. And at no other point in time in Lightspeed have you ever hit anything.
But wait a minute. So, okay.
I just assume that there's no way you could hit something in Lightspeed, because how do you jump from one point to another point?
It's not actual Lightspeed, it's hyperspace.
Yeah.
So the whole hitting things, like, yeah, you could make an army of droid ships with hyperspace engines and just launch them at each other, and you just bypass shields that way, because she did.
Yeah.
She bypassed all of the shields in the First Order Armada just by hitting Lightspeed and blowing through all of them.
Right.
And then you have the other side of the argument, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I've heard all sorts of things from, well, you might still be able to hit things in your transition period from hyperspace, like from regular space.
Because, hold on, wait a minute. Because something about that doesn't make any sense to me, because in the very first movie,
yeah,
A New Hope,
yeah,
Han makes a point of saying you wouldn't want to fly through a planet that would end your day really quickly. So he has to plot a point.
He says you would end up in an asteroid field or flying through a supernova. But they do end up in an asteroid field. Do you recall that?
Yeah, the blown up planet.
Yeah, except they didn't experience any issues from being in that asteroid field until they left hyperspace.
Yep.
It just doesn't. Okay, it doesn't compute because now other things that I've read when it comes to that is that, again, this is Lucas trying to fix his own F up when it comes to the doing the Kessel Run.
Yeah.
In Kessel Run, parsecs is a distance, not time.
Well, there's a lot of different ways that a lot of different writers have tried to make that work, and Lucas himself never worried about it. He didn't care.
Well, he said, he made a statement that it was the shortest anybody has ever run that run, which, because of navigation-wise, they would have to go through certain things that most people wouldn't have even tried.
Yeah.
And in the movie Han Solo, the Han Solo story, they show why that Kessel Run was done the way he did it in that short amount of time.
Well, we didn't talk about any of those movies.
Yeah, that's fine.
Either of those movies yet.
But that short amount of space is because he decided to go through a space, like, I don't even know what to call it, anomaly that nobody would ever go through. Like, only he, knowing that the Falcon could or could not make it through, made it through that. So it made the distance that he traveled shorter than any other distance by running that Kessel Run.
That's one way to try and explain it. Sure.
So
and it's one way that they have tried to do it in some of the comic books and stuff, but it's a weird explanation to try and legitimately, like, try to legitimize something that was just supposed to be space jargon in the first movie.
Right.
It's like if you tried to, like, go back through, like, Star Trek: The Next Generation and try and legitimize all their space jargon, you could do it for a billion years and never arrive anywhere. It doesn't really matter.
Right, but the thing is that even in Star Trek,
yeah,
when they chart a path in warp, they have to path themselves around
Because warp
things.
and hyperspace are two different things. Warp is making yourself move faster. Hyperspace is entering a different space.
Okay.
And
So what's
you
your-
can see the entering a different space thing in Force Awakens when Han uses hyperspace to get past the shield that's around Starkiller Base.
Yeah. So what's your logical thing that nobody really ever brings up that makes it stupid?
I just said it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Han uses hyperspace
Oh, okay.
to get past the shield of
Right.
Starkiller Base.
I always just assumed because, like, in my head, there's no logical
in-
way
in
that you can
hyperspace-
get from
in
one
hyperspace, you
point
don't-
to another without hitting something, unless you automatically just don't hit things when you're in hyperspace.
Yeah, and I never saw.
because there's no way to plot out
I
like
guess
every
I-
single little asteroid.
Yeah,
I
there's
guess
no way.
because I've been a Trekkie for just as long as I've been a Star Wars fanatic, I always assume that when they plot and need navigation systems to run into hyperspace, that they're doing the same things they were doing in Star Trek, which is plotting ways around things that they have already.
Done. The scene.
Because again,
But the thing is, like
In Star Trek-
that's a problem that I kind of have with Star Trek is because they're just moving really really fast. And that's a problem that is like one small pebble of an asteroid that you plow into at several times the speed of light, and you're
Well,
just gonna
just-
wreck your shit.
Yeah.
well, and that's why even in the earlier, like, so we're gonna go to some of the obscure Star Trek stuff, like Enterprise,
Mhm.
before shields were even remotely a thing.
Yeah,
Like, you know, they have the shields now in Next Generation and stuff like that. These giant domes that come over their ships that
Yeah.
repel things. They just had what they called armor plating
Mhm.
over their ship, which allowed them to hit those small microscopic things at higher speeds, and they just bounce off. That's what the armor plating was made for. Now, they did also use the armor plating in, like, battle, because, again, back in the original, in that version of Star Trek, which is the original Enterprise, they didn't have shields, so, and they also didn't have a lot of phasers and photon torpedoes, so it was a lot of ancient style projectile weapons.
yeah.
So they used armor plating instead of shielding. As the Star Trek realm grew, they had to have shielding because they ended up with phasers and photon torpedoes and stuff that did different types of damage.
Right.
So they needed shielding instead of just instead of plating. But if you really look at even like the Next Generation, the Enterprise D still had that armor plating on, so they could go through at that high speed and not hit those smaller stuff wouldn't matter.
I get that, but it's like force is mass matters half as much as velocity in a forced algorithm. And
I know
that
this.
was my entire thing was just it doesn't matter how small it is that of a thing that they're hitting. The fact that they're hitting it at several times the speed of light is an issue
Yeah.
because the speed of light in.
They have vibranium, okay? Leave them alone.
But I was willing to excuse it because that's just sort of the rules of Star Trek.
Yeah, that's
And in the
just
rules of Star Wars,
are different.
being in hyperspace, you don't hit anything.
Yeah.
And they show this clearly in no
Multiple.
less than 2 movies.
Yeah, but I guess it was just never the way I saw it.
And then well, that
It's
no
just
one
one of those
thought
things.
about it.
Because they don't
Because
exactly
no
explain
one
it.
ever really thought about it. But that was the thing is in the first movie of the original trilogy and the first movie of the sequel trilogy, they both show that you don't hit anything while you're in hyperspace.
Wait, didn't
And
she
then
go
in
through
the-
a planet? She went through a planet too, didn't she?
No, I think she just went through the Armada. But I don't even know which ship she was aiming for. But it suddenly destroyed all of the ships, and that doesn't really make any sense either.
Yeah. No, I think she went through a planet too. I thought.
No, I don't.
I might be thinking
remember
of
that.
a different movie, maybe.
But
It's been a minute
but-
since I've seen.
regardless, it's just they take that and they stick it in The Last Jedi, and they make it seem like this big dramatic moment, and it's like, dude, that was a way easier way to take out the second Death Star if that's true.
True.
You could have literally just attached a droid to an X-wing and just said, fly that at hyperspeed toward that big ball thing, and been done with it just straight off the bat.
Yeah, but they had to make that big battle where they had to take down the shield that was from the moon and then take it. Yeah,
It's so pointless though because it didn't even mean anything in the end.
Yeah.
Again, though, those are the newer movies where they're talking about using hyperspace in that way. They never talked about using hyperspace in that way.
Yeah.
In
Well, that's the
neither
thing,
the prequel
in
or
the-
the original.
In the sequel trilogy, you get both. You get in
They
Force
can,
Awakens,
they can't.
you get you don't touch anything while in hyperspace,
Right.
and you also get you hit things while you're in hyperspace.
The next
one movie,
movie.
one right after the other.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is like, it's like,
So when I heard people arguing this point about the last Jedi, and well, of course you can hit things, that's not an inconsistency in the lore. It's like, can you not go back one movie and rewatch your movie?
right.
Like,
They
But
explain
again,
they
that's
define it pretty
one of the
clearly.
big things about having two different directors run the movie and changing the story.
yeah, one of the directors being the king of nostalgia, and the other director being the king of fuck your feelings. Like,
Yeah.
like, how do you feel that this movie should have went? Yeah, fuck that. It's
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Tim hasn't seen the last movie.
I've literally just seen like reviews and like story outlines. I have no idea what any of the real details are. I have no desire to watch the movie.
Devin
at
and
all.
I think, okay, so I saw it twice for my own stupidity reasons in theaters. One, I went and saw it with a kid, and the other one, I was dragged to it. But anyway, you've seen it in theaters only. Have you tried to watch it again since? Neither have I.
I'm not
'Cause I've had no-
terribly interested.
I've had no real want to watch it.
Because like
Again.
I said this before, and I've just noticed it from the new trilogy, the sequel trilogy. Is like I went and saw Force Awakens in theaters the first time, and I enjoyed it enough. Then I saw it again in theater, and I didn't enjoy it as much. And then Last Jedi came out, and I was just like, I kind of enjoyed watching the cool things they did with the Falcon and certain things in the movie, but it was the experience that had me high on it, not the actual movie itself. And then I went and saw it again in theaters, and I fell asleep. And then I tried to watch it at home, and I fell asleep. And then I tried to watch it again at home, and I was like, I don't really like this one.
Right.
And
lot
so
of-
by the
okay,
time I
so-
got to the third one of the new sequel, I watched that one in theater, and I'm like,
so the
I'm
point
not
that
even going to bother again.
The point that I'm trying to get at with that is that the sequel trilogies, since they were done by somebody completely different, it didn't seem like they had enough.
Cohesion.
Yes.
It just
I think that's the best word for it. It's like they didn't. Instead of using the same person, which I don't know if they did in the other movies or not, but at least they were able to say, "Hey, make the first movie, the second movie, and the third movie actually make sense when watched together."
Yeah.
Because even in the prequel
Well,
trilogies, if you watch them,
the prequel trilogies were mostly written by Lucas. The original trilogy was written by Lucas and
directed by a couple different people,
and it was written by Lucas and another guy.
okay,
They brought on that other guy whose name I can't remember, but he's a guy that is famous in the Star Wars community because he's the guy who gets most of the credit for writing Empire.
yeah.
They brought him in to write stuff for the sequel trilogy. I don't know how much of what he had got through.
apparently not a whole lot.
I do know that a lot of people on set for The Last Jedi complained about Rian Johnson basically taking... Because J.J. Abrams gave him his concept script and said, here's where I thought the second movie would go. Do whatever you want with it. And what he did with it was apparently throw it away.
Right.
So-
And that's what I'm saying is like the prequel trilogy, they all cohesively made a story.
Right, they meshed
Between the
together
three.
into one story.
The original trilogy meshed together to make one story.
Yeah.
Now you followed Luke through his progression, you followed Anakin through his progression, and then this one, it seemed like you're following Rey through her progression,
What progression?
but
There isn't really a progression.
No,
what
she
I
was
mean-
already up here.
She has no character progression. She experiences no challenges.
okay, so
She-
she goes through life, and that's all
Yeah.
you're watching. But she was already BA at the end of the first one, so
Yeah.
what does it
Yeah,
matter?
they could have turned the sequel trilogy into a sitcom, and it would amount to the same thing.
And that's because I honestly I don't really care for J.J. Abrams, but at least like I bet you if he had gone with whatever the concept
If he had directed all three movies,
it would probably be a much
it would
better
at least
trilogy.
be one cohesive story.
Yeah.
It might not have been the best story, might not have been even a very good story, but you know what? It would have been a story.
It would have been cohesive.
Because I bet they probably wouldn't have killed off Snoke in the second movie if they had gone with. I
'cause
mean, that's
the
just.
thing
I don't. My whole thing.
I don't like giving Daisy Ridley crap because I understand she's just doing what she's told to do and she's reading her script and doing all that. She's a good actress that got picked for the role, and I think she could have done it. The thing is, what they gave her was not good.
Yeah.
It's not a good direction to go. Honestly, I wish they would have done the sequel trilogy as just go back in time like a little bit from where they are, go more into like they're clearing out the remnants of the Empire, and do a whole story about Luke founding the new Jedi Order and the situations that come up with that. And you want to stick a female character in it? Stick Ahsoka in there. Because Ahsoka from the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels in canon
is still alive.
in canon is not only still alive, but she's looking for more Jedi at the end of Rebels. She's running around looking specifically for other Jedi. So what the hell is she going to do when she finds them? Well, I bet you she's probably going to try and found the new Jedi Order.
Right.
So they could have done something with that. They could have had one
They
of
had
the
a
most,
lot of things that-
Ahsoka's not only one of the most popular characters in Star Wars, she's also a female character. If they wanted to go with a female character, they could have just picked one that's already popular.
Yeah, they already
and stuck
had-
her in an actual
they
movie.
already had
Truthfully,
things
if
in
they would
canon.
have ran a trilogy with Ahsoka, just following her trying to put together a Jedi Order,
Yeah, her
I
working
would-
together with Luke and putting
hell
together a
yeah,
Jedi
I
Order,
would have
yeah.
watched it.
Because Ahsoka is one of my favorite characters.
The thing is that they wanted to continue to run against the Empire, which the Empire was done at the end of.
6, yeah, at the end of.
Yeah,
Empire Strikes Back.
they could have done like destroying the remnants of the Empire and then trying to found the new Jedi Order, and then something happens. They could have stole stuff from anywhere in
Right, I
in
mean,
Star Wars Legends. They
and
could have
just because-
they could have just simply had like the Yuzong Vong War happen. That could have been neat. You know,
Or-
they're
or
trying to
even-
refound the Jedi Order, and then a giant race of people from the outskirts of the galaxy start showing up that are semi-immune to the Force, which that's going to be a problem if you're trying to bring about new Jedi that are
Well,
fledglings in the Force.
just because Vader and Palpatine are Insidious are
Mm-hmm.
gone, that doesn't mean that all the Sith are gone. Who knows? Vader had apprentices that people didn't know about.
Mhm.
Just because they're not as big as some doesn't
Well, I
mean
mean,
that he
in-
couldn't
well,
have
In
continued.
canon, during Star Wars, the Star Wars Rebels TV show, you have like the Inquisitors, which are basically Sith that aren't Sith.
Yeah, exactly. They're not
Right,
part of
so,
the
I mean,
order or whatever.
That's
but-
what I'm saying. Is like, yeah, continue the story. That's fine. Use Ahsoka and Luke, but bring on a new Sith that maybe Vader was training. And
Well-
when Vader decided to do what he did was, and then he's
Well,
still...
the reason why I liked the idea of the Yuzhong Vong would have been like maybe the Yuzhong Vong didn't invade earlier because they thought that the Empire was cohesive enough and organized enough that they could have held them off. And now that the Empire is destroyed and everyone's trying to rebuild a new republic, they find it to be a good opportunity to come in while everyone's disorganized and take them on.
Right.
And the guys who who the Republic was relying on to try and protect them in the meantime, which was this newly founded Jedi Order, is mostly ineffective against the Yuuzhan Vong because they have partial Force immunity.
Right.
And that could have been a really neat story.
Great too.
Well, and another thing that's always been a part of the story that they've never really gone for is the Force in general. It's not like there's only Jedi and only Sith.
Right.
There could be plenty of other people that were like, oh, this is what I feel like is the right way to go. Plenty of other religions or ideologies, which is something we talked about.
They go over that in
one.
Rogue One. There are religions based off of the Force. They go over that in the Clone Wars. They go to several planets of Force users that aren't Jedi or Sith. That where the Force is their religion, but they view it differently than the Jedi or the Sith do.
Yeah, or they could have definitely done something with that.
Yeah.
I mean, and a big thing, in establishing the rule of two is like, sure, they exterminated all the Sith in the Order of Darkness or whatever, and then began the rule of two. But it's not as if like there aren't going to be other people that realize that they have the Force and or can tap into the Sith
bunch of different directions that they could have gone.
Yeah.
They just wanted. I mean, the thing is that they wanted to continue with what we all knew, which was the fight against the Empire, saying that the Empire never finished, and that just because
the story gets cheaper because of that.
Yeah,
especially like Ryan Johnson. I'm really surprised. Like his whole thing was he wants to be nuanced and he wants to make everything gray and not and twist things in ways you don't understand. He could have.
He certainly twisted things in ways I don't understand.
Did he read any of the material that came before? Like he could have made everything extremely nuanced. Like the Empire was really kind of good because they were holding off this thing from the edge of the Empire, like the edge of the galaxy, which they go over in the books. There's something on the edge of the galaxy that Palpatine was trying to make toward or something. Like there's something going on out there. It has a thing, and he could have done this whole like, well, maybe the Empire was actually a force for good, and you destroyed it.
Yeah, they don't ever even play with the idea that anything exists outside of the Empire or the rebellion against them.
Right. Like all he did was all they always do is just continue the paradigm that they insist that Lucas made too simple, which is good versus evil.
You just reminded me of something, again, off topic, about the Winter Court from Dresden.
Oh, yeah.
You have no idea what the Winter Court is actually doing for everybody, which is protecting them from these...
Everyone always insists that Lucas made the whole thing too simple by just making it a story about good versus evil. And then all they want to do is continue the story of good versus evil.
Yeah.
It's like, let's complicate things a little bit. I don't know. So, we kind of went through all the movies. We kind of bypassed the side movies, which I'm not too worried about. Rogue One, we'll make our real quick comments. Rogue One's a great movie.
I liked it.
Good movie.
I think it's a perfectly fine movie. It's
the Han Solo story was
good for those. It looked like a
good for those people who just want that like, oh my god, that's really cool. That's how that happened. Oh my god, that's real cool. That's how that. But the movie itself was blah.
If you like things that are completely unnecessary, you'll love Solo.
I get a lot of people that really like Solo.
To me.
I enjoyed the movie of Solo. It was just an okay movie though.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
did you know Han Solo was a smuggler?
No.
Did you know that he knew Lando Calrissian?
Did you know that he was a hustler too? Oh my gosh!
Did you know that he knew Chewbacca?
So here's the one question I have.
Did you know he may have had romantic interest before Princess Leia?
Here's the one question I have for you guys, because we're gonna end the podcast here right after this.
We're like at 2 hours here.
But so they have plans for another trilogy that doesn't involve Skywalkers.
Then what's the point?
Okay, but there's Star Wars trilogies that don't involve Skywalkers, and they're planning on making them. They're already in the makes. So my real question is what trilogies would you guys like to see that don't directly involve a Skywalker?
Master Yoda.
I want to see what Ahsoka does.
Yeah, I want to see just take the characters that you've already got and maybe give them more story. I don't necessarily care to have a whole other trilogy.
If you don't want to involve the Skywalkers, at the end of Rebels, when Ahsoka goes running off and she's like, Ezra's still alive, and she goes running off to find more Jedi and to find Ezra and to see what's going on with this whole new light thing that she feels. Just make a whole trilogy about her running off and trying to find Ezra and trying to find new Jedi. And just
I would, and again, like I said, I would watch that.
Well,
and if she doesn't run into a single Skywalker the whole freaking time, whatever.
We didn't talk about Mandalorian. Have you seen it yet, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we won't spend a whole lot of time on it because we're going really long here on this episode. But I've heard for season 2 that they've actually casted somebody as Ahsoka.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah.
And I am really excited.
You never know. They might go in a good direction with that because I really loved Mandalorian.
For me, I would like to see something...
I would like them to see them cast someone as Sabine.
Yeah.
Because if they're gonna make an entire show about Mandalorians, and they're gonna have Ahsoka in, they might as well have the Mandalorian that she hung out with for an entire freaking show.
I would like to see something from the Old Republic.
I would really enjoy that too.
Like, just do Revan.
Anything.
Just do Revan.
just do Revan.
From the Old Republic, whether it's Bane or Revan or...
They could even do, establish a new, how did this whole Jedi Sith shit begin?
Right.
Yeah.
Do their,
Alright. So, with that, I'm going to consider that as our recommendations for the day.
Our recommendations to Disney to get their shit together?
Right. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and say, talk at you later.